I don't know about you, but I hate to see a man sleep. I don't know what it is, but something about watching them close their eyes and be at rest doesn't sit right with me. I don't know why.
This seemingly innocent statement reveals something deeply disturbing about the modern female psyche that most people aren't ready to confront. This woman is expressing genuine discomfort and hatred toward the sight of a man in a state of complete vulnerability and rest. Let that sink in for a moment. She's describing visceral negative emotions toward watching another human being do the most basic, necessary biological function required for survival. But this isn't random or irrational. This is revealing core aspects of female psychology that women themselves don't fully understand but feel compelled to express. When a man is sleeping, he represents everything that triggers the most primitive and destructive female instincts. He's not performing, not producing, not entertaining, not providing value, and most importantly, not paying attention to her. Sleep represents a state where men are completely outside of female control and manipulation. A sleeping man cannot be nagged, cannot be given tasks, cannot be made to feel guilty, cannot be emotionally manipulated, and cannot provide immediate attention or validation. This creates a psychological crisis for women who have been conditioned to view men primarily as sources of attention, validation, resources, and emotional labor. The fact that she says something about watching them close their eyes and the rest doesn't sit right with me is particularly revealing. She's describing the specific moment when men withdraw their attention and focus from the external world, and by extension, from her. This is experienced as a form of rejection or abandonment, even though sleep is a biological necessity that has absolutely nothing to do with her. This reveals the fundamentally narcissistic worldview of modern women. Everything a man does must somehow relate back to her and her needs. When men sleep, they're not available to provide the constant stream of attention and validation that women have come to expect as their default state. This unavailability is experienced as a personal slight, even when it's completely involuntary and necessary for basic human functioning. But there's an even darker layer to this psychology. When men are awake, they can be controlled, manipulated, and directed toward female goals. When they're sleeping, they exist purely for themselves, in a state of peace and rest that serves no female purpose. This independence from female needs and desires creates a deep psychological discomfort for women who have been programmed to view men as existing primarily to serve female interests. The sleep hatred also reveals women's inability to tolerate male autonomy in any form. Even the most basic biological function that all humans require becomes a source of resentment when men engage in it. This suggests that the modern female psyche cannot accept any aspect of male existence that doesn't directly benefit or involve women. Men must be constantly available, constantly performing, constantly proving their worth, even during the hours when their bodies and minds require rest and recovery. This is also connected to women's deep-seated fear of male self-sufficiency and independence. A sleeping man doesn't need anything from anyone. He's not seeking female approval, attention, or validation. He's existing in a completely self-contained state that demonstrates men's ability to be content and peaceful without female involvement. This terrifies women because it contradicts their fundamental belief that men should be constantly seeking female approval and validation. I've seen multiple women expressing these sentiments publicly, which suggests this isn't an isolated psychological quirk. It's a widespread manifestation of how modern women have been conditioned to view men. They cannot tolerate seeing men in states of peace, rest, or independence because these states don't serve female interests or provide female benefits. What makes this even more disturbing is that sleep is when humans are most vulnerable. We're unconscious, defenseless, and completely dependent on our environment being safe and secure. The fact that women are expressing hatred and discomfort toward men in this vulnerable state reveals a complete absence of protective instincts or basic human empathy. Instead of feeling tenderness or care toward vulnerable men, they feel resentment and irritation. This connects to a broader pattern where modern women have been programmed to view male vulnerability as weakness rather than humanity. When men show any sign of needing rest, recovery, emotional support, or basic human care, women respond with disgust and contempt rather than compassion. They've been conditioned to see men as machines that should be constantly productive rather than human beings with the same basic needs as everyone else. The sleep hatred also reveals women's inability to find peace or contentment in relationships. If you genuinely love and care about someone, watching them sleep peacefully should be one of the most satisfying and tender experiences possible. It represents safety, security, trust, and intimacy. The fact that these women find it disturbing suggests they don't actually experience love for men in any recognizable form. They experience utility relationships where men are valued only for what they can provide when conscious and active. This is connected to women's documented inability to love men unconditionally. Female love is almost always transactional and performance-based. Women love men who are successful, attractive, entertaining, and useful. But sleeping men provide none of these benefits. They're just human beings existing in their most basic state. The inability to find beauty or value in this reveals the fundamentally conditional nature of female love. The psychological roots of this phenomenon go back to evolutionary programming where women needed men to be constantly alert and productive for survival purposes. In primitive environments, a sleeping man wasn't hunting, protecting, or providing resources. But in modern safe environments, this programming has become pathological and destructive, turning normal human rest into a source of female resentment. This also connects to the modern epidemic of sleep deprivation among men in relationships. Many married men report being constantly interrupted during sleep by wives who want attention, conversation, or tasks completed. The female inability to respect male rest needs leads to systematic sleep disruption that damages men's physical and mental health over time. The fact that she admits, "I don't know why," reveals that these feelings are operating at a subconscious level. She's not making a rational decision to hate sleeping men, she's experiencing primitive emotional reactions that she doesn't understand but feels compelled to act on. This suggests these are deeply programmed responses that operate below conscious awareness but drive behavior nonetheless. What we've uncovered here is far more disturbing than most people are prepared to acknowledge. This seemingly innocent confession about hating to see men sleep reveals fundamental pathologies in modern female psychology that explain many of the relationship problems we see in contemporary society. At its core, this phenomenon represents the complete inability of modern women to view men as human beings with the same basic needs, vulnerabilities, and rights to peace and rest as everyone else. Instead, men are viewed as performance machines that should be constantly available to provide attention, entertainment, validation, and resources to women. When men engage in necessary biological functions like sleep, they're experienced as failing in their primary purpose of serving female needs. This represents a level of narcissistic entitlement that borders on sociopathic. The idea that another person's basic biological needs create negative emotions because they don't serve your interests reveals a complete absence of empathy and basic human decency. Normal, psychologically healthy people find peace and satisfaction in watching loved ones rest and recover. The fact that modern women experience the opposite reaction suggests something has gone fundamentally wrong with female socialization and psychological development. The broader implications of this mindset are staggering. If women cannot tolerate men being unavailable for even the most basic biological necessity, what does this say about their capacity for genuine love, partnership, or mutual respect? How can you build a healthy relationship with someone who resents your need for sleep? How can you trust someone who finds your vulnerability and rest disturbing rather than precious? This also explains many of the sleep-related problems that men in relationships report. The constant interruptions, the guilt about sleeping in, the pressure to be constantly available even during rest periods, all of this stems from women's fundamental inability to respect male autonomy and basic human needs. Men are being systematically deprived of adequate rest because women view male sleep as selfish or inconvenient rather than necessary. The evolutionary roots of this behavior don't justify its expression in modern contexts. We no longer live in environments where men need to be constantly alert for predators or hunting opportunities. The inability to adapt these primitive programming patterns to safe, modern environments reveals a lack of psychological evolution and maturity among modern women. This phenomenon also connects to broader patterns of female hostility toward male independence and self-sufficiency. Women have been conditioned to view men as existing primarily to serve female interests, so any behavior that demonstrates male autonomy or independence, even something as basic as sleep, triggers anxiety and resentment. This reveals the fundamentally parasitic nature of how many modern women approach relationships. What makes this particularly disturbing is the complete lack of self-awareness or shame about expressing these feelings. These women aren't recognizing that hating someone for sleeping reveals serious psychological problems. They're treating it as a quirky preference or reasonable complaint. This suggests a level of entitlement and narcissism that prevents them from recognizing the absurdity and cruelty of their own attitudes. For men, this represents another data point in understanding the true nature of modern female psychology. Women who express hatred toward male sleep are revealing that they don't see men as human beings deserving of basic respect and care. They see men as utility objects that should be constantly available for female benefit. Any man dealing with a woman who expresses these attitudes should recognize this as a massive red flag indicating deeper psychological problems and fundamental incompatibility with healthy relationship dynamics. The solution for men is to recognize that women who cannot respect something as basic as your need for sleep are not suitable partners under any circumstances. This level of narcissistic entitlement and lack of empathy will manifest in every aspect of the relationship, creating constant conflict and preventing any genuine intimacy or mutual respect from developing. This phenomenon also reveals why modern relationships are so exhausting and unsustainable for men. When your basic biological needs are viewed as inconveniences or failures to serve female interests, you can never truly relax or recover. You are constantly performing, constantly available, constantly on call to provide whatever women demand. This creates chronic stress and exhaustion that damages men's physical and mental health over time. This is why increasing numbers of men are choosing solitude over relationships with modern women. When being alone allows you to rest peacefully while being in a relationship means your sleep becomes a source of female resentment, the choice becomes obvious. Men are learning that their basic human needs are better respected in solitude than in relationships with women who view male rest as a personal affront to their entitlement to constant attention and service.
Something about watching them close their eyes and be at rest doesn't sit right with me.